Okay, so when we conduct a survey, what we're trying to do here is we're looking at the perspective of the consumer. So this is a sentiment survey. It's not dealing with facts and figures. This is what the GDP is. This is, detailed information. It's information that the public are giving back to us. We reach out to a very specific target audience, a real estate buying and renting target audience. So we get sort of very valuable data from a very valuable audience there. But it's all from their perspective. So a real estate professional might say property prices or rental prices have been dropping ever since the LNG boom, for example. But the consumer might see it from a different perspective and think that prices are different. So this is what we need to look at. It's not from our perspective, it's from their perspective. It gives us an understanding of the wants and needs of the market. So do people want to buy apartments downtown? Do they want to buy sky rises, or do they want affordable housing? Now what we have now, this is the 5th survey. So we've got a lot of data behind us and we're building up trends. And what this means is that we can look at some of the anomalies that go with it and try and understand why that might be. For example, the effects of APEC in 2018 or the effects of COVID in 2020. But what it does do is it gives us a certain amount of integrity when we see a lot of the sameness in the results, consistency in the results. We can start to say, well, there's some integrity in what we're saying here. It makes sense. That's the kind of figures that we were expecting to get. We have added some new questions this year. We do like to change things around. We've asked questions about the coronavirus. We've asked questions about ultra-affordable housing. We asked specific questions about banking and finance. And we added a new section about commercial properties as well. So to very quickly go through, we'll go through quickly the Respondents Profile, the effects of COVID, the rental, the sales, the commercial markets, finance and insurance, and then we'll draw our conclusions and we'll open the door for discussion. So very quickly, we had just under 2,000 respondents of the survey. 96% of them were born in Papua New Guinea. The gender mix, 46 to 54. The majority of people were between the house buying age of 20 to 50. The differences that we did see this year is the 21 to 30s dropped very slightly, but all in all there seemed to be a general increase in the average age. Occupation-wise, the majority of people were working for the government. The people earning less than $2,000 a month has gone down, and then in the upper areas, you've seen a very slight increase. So there's still a lot of consistency, but a general improvement. When it comes to how people live, the majority of people are living in a traditional family unit, that is, spouse and children. But there have been quite a few changes here, and the number of people living with their extended family has increased significantly compared to last year. Now, later information might suggest that this is an attempt to try and save money, perhaps. The other interesting anomaly is the number of people who live alone has jumped dramatically compared to last year. And again, is this to do with social distancing? It's difficult to analyze that one. So asking specific questions on COVID and the effect of COVID on jobs. So the majority of people, 63%, really said there was no major change in terms of their jobs. Around about 21% said they either lost their jobs or they experienced a pay cut. In terms of how people search for properties, again, majority of people, no change, but there has been a significant increase on the number of people who are looking online. Now, there may be several reasons for this. We are a little bit biased because we reach out to an online audience, of course. But we have seen an improvement in internet services in PNG over the years. This is always going to make a bit of a difference. And plus Hausples has introduced new services like 360 virtual tours, which can make viewing a lot easier. So as buying behavior goes, this was quite interesting again. A small number of people either received or were given a rental reduction. But a huge number of people were either looking for investment for the future, or they were trying to save money. An interesting anomaly during a pandemic, but not really a bad one. So moving on to the rental markets. In terms of what sort of properties people are interested in, houses obviously came out first and apartments came out second. Now this is quite interesting with the apartments, because when we look at the sales market, it's completely different. But overall, there has been, again, some changes in the number of people renting compared to the number of people who own properties. In fact, there's been a significant jump in the amount of home ownership. Now again, this may be because a lot of overseas workers have been repatriated. They generally take up a lot of the rental markets, so they may have skewed the figures there. But that was an interesting one for us. In terms of locations, the majority of people who responded were interested in renting in NCD. And within NCD, Waigani, Baroko, and East Baroko were by far the most popular choices of places to rent, with Gerahu jumping up quite significantly from last year. The outskirts of Port Moresby don't have much interest in the rental markets at the moment. Just to mention that we did allow multiple choices in these answers, which is why it doesn't add up to 100. For rental budgets, less is more, no huge surprise there. People taking up 500 a week dominates, with over half of respondents claiming so. But there were some changes with the 500 to 1,000 mark, which has dropped from 40 to 27%, whilst the 1,000 to 2,000 a week has jumped from 7 to 17%. So this is suggesting there's a significant increase in the rental budgets this year compared to last year. So moving on to the sales market and the perception of affordability in PNG. Unsurprisingly, there is an overwhelming feeling that property is unaffordable. However, it does seem to be a little less unaffordable than it was last year. So when we look at what's very and what's moderately unaffordable, we can see some, again, significant changes there compared to the responses from last year. So budgets for housing, we made some changes to the question this year. We added extra options. So less than 200,000 for a house, for a home and land package. That took up 20%, nearly 21% of the responses. We did ask last year for 200 to 400,000. This year we've broken to 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. We really wanted to try and understand that side of the market a little bit better. So as a combined, the 2 to 300 figure is 23% and the 3 to 400 figure is 20%, so 43%. That compares to 37% last year, so a slight increase there. Now looking at the types of property that people would be interested in buying, high-set houses by far dominates the demand, with low-set houses coming in second. Apartments are barely wanted. 5% of people want to buy an apartment. Now bear in mind, this is the target market that we were reaching out to, but this is what people think. They don't want the high-rise apartments downtown to buy. They're looking for larger, spacious areas in which to live. So in terms of the location, NCD once again dominates this part of the market. The usual suspects, Waigani, Baroko, Gerahu, all coming out on top. But there is here a demand for the out-of-town locations compared to the rental markets. So 8 Mile, 9 Mile, Napa Napa, Lea Lea, these areas are suddenly a lot more popular as places to live. Most likely, land prices are a lot cheaper out there. kind of makes sense. So we delved a little bit into the ultra affordable side of the market, and this was, again, new questions. And we were asking, if we were to build a house for less than 300,000, say, what would your expectations be? Would you be wanting Buckingham Palace? Or would you expect something that's going to be fairly modest? And again, the responses were pretty good. Overall, they would want their land titles. There's no doubt about that. People have spoken, they want their land titles. But in terms of, do they want a big house, do they want a small house, they seem to be quite comfortable with something, 1, maybe 2 rooms, not bedrooms, just rooms in general. Connections to the sewage and the like could be sacrificed in order to make the house a little bit more affordable. We could make do with septic tanks, for example. But security and perimeter definitions and fencing, that's something that was generally quite well sought after. Very quickly onto the commercial properties. Now this was a new section. We didn't reach out specifically to a commercial market, so we didn't get a huge response, but there were some quite telling responses that we did get here. In terms of types of commercial properties that people were after, retail, office, warehouse seemed to be the most popular choices. Space-wise, anything less than 500 square meters is going to very much dominate, but again, it's a very mixed basket there. Price-wise, yeah, I think less is more once again here. So again, under 800 per square meter is what people are looking for. You're not going to get much downtown for that sort of price, but getting outside of Port Moresby, again, that's maybe a little bit more realistic. We did ask what people would expect within the rentals, and in fairness, I gave them a bit of a wish list, and they kind of said yes to everything. So maybe I asked that one slightly wrong, but security, water, electricity, they're not too fussed about the cleaning. So moving on to finance, the majority of people, 80%, would be looking for a mortgage. No massive surprise there. The majority of people who responded, 71%, would class themselves as first home buyers. A fairly decent portion looking as investment buyers, so second homes, investment homes. But a very small number, only 3.5%, were looking at moving from one house to another house. So again, quite interesting how our markets compare maybe to other overseas markets. Looking at deposits, the majority of people would be able to afford a 10% deposit. Only a handful of people said less, so that's showing a little bit of maturity in the market. 20% deposits were also fairly commonplace, so quite interesting. So anything below 20, that's kind of dominating the whole market there. We asked what the main factors were when looking for a home loan. Interest rates were the most important thing. Again, it's all about the cost. You know, the second most important would be the term of the loan. So kind of an indication that people were trying to keep the monthly costs down, which is understandable. We did also ask the question as to how they would be likely to apply for the home loan, and we were giving them 3 options: online as some sort of centralized area to get your home loans, or would you like to go to your local branch? And overwhelmingly, everybody really wants to go to their local branch. What is it with your local branches? We had a few questions on the insurance side of things. Again, nice to see that the majority of people were saying yes, they do want to insure their properties, and a quarter of people are considering insuring their properties. So again, similarly, what's important within an insurance policy? Not the cost of the premiums. So the actual coverage of the policy is more important than the cost of the policy. So this is an interesting one for me. I guess P&G does have its risks. We are in an earthquake-prone area. We do have security concerns. We do have flooding, as you're all aware. So, yeah, coverage of the policies is a very important aspect. So we asked people about where they actually source their real estate information on, and we touched on this before with the COVID question. So the majority of people are looking online, not just Hausples, but obviously we've seen improvements. We've got a new website out now. We've offered new services, but also Facebook, agency websites, and the like are becoming more and more popular. So again, I think with an improvement in the internet services that we have, marginal price decreases, hopefully more price decreases, and faster internet, that will improve. Other aspects, agencies going directly to agencies, still features on there, print media. So there are always other areas of people, but again, we were very biased in terms of we're reaching out to an online audience. So of course people were generally looking online anyway. So to finish this off now and to draw a few conclusions, COVID-19 hasn't really affected the market from the consumer point of view as much as we would have expected it to. However, it does seem to have changed the way that people search for property. There continues to be a demand for 3-bed, high-set houses. We talked about this last year, ideally under 500,000 kina, if that's possible. Out-of-town locations are perfectly acceptable. There is certainly a demand for ultra-affordable housing. But there's not a huge demand for apartments for sale. On the rental markets, there appears to be a fallback on the rentals, particularly in the higher end of the market. However, borders are reopening, and that seems to be picking up, certainly from a Hausples perspective. Things seem to be picking up reasonably well, given the circumstances. So, that's it from me.